I'm Chris McKean.
I'm Andy Kiner.
We're all about cross-country racing, but usually it all starts with 10 seconds.
But not in Iowa. In Iowa, it all starts with hands-on helmets.
Welcome to those who've already joined us. Quite the week, right, Andy?
Oh, boy.
What have you been up to?
Been working up to about 5 minutes ago.
Up until 5 minutes ago. So we almost had to alter the podcast here just for you.
But let me remind you, Andy was on time, wasn't he? Tell me about that, Chris.
You were on time for once. So my shirt that I'm wearing tonight probably doesn't work for today, but there's always tomorrow.
What's that shirt you came up with? This is like the big part of this podcast is what's Chris wearing today?
It says, sorry, I'm late. I'm on Kiner time.
That should be like T Kiner. You know, we always blame that on Tracy.
She's not here to defend herself. So
True.
Yeah, pretty busy week. First podcast we thought was pretty successful. Been kind of, as my wife says, I think we're talking more than you and I are talking more than her and I talk lately. So
I think in 20 years that's been said quite a bit. We're both guilty of that.
So I do see some people are already joining. We've got quite the crew already tuned in. Just want to let everybody know we're going to go through. We have our first special guest today. We do have comments turned on, so if you do have a question or a comment, we will just let them accumulate. And then towards the end, we've set aside some time to part of our podcast, Ask Andy. We can ask Andy anything, maybe what he's wearing today.
Oh, better stay away from that.
So lots of fun, good conversation, some laughs. I'm sure some good stories are going to be on their way in the next hour or so. So before we get started, we'll go ahead and just, we'll introduce our guest. We'll kind of just talk about the beginning, how the idea of this series came about. And it's been 23 years now. So we've only been racing for 20, but we'll kind of talk through. It's been about 23 years or so. We've all kind of been involved with each other.
Not to interrupt you there, Chris, but how you said introduce a guest. So this is like our first guest, very first one ever.
Our very first guest. Yes, we had some good. I put out that teaser this week. If anybody could guess who it was, there was somebody that did guess it right, but
I didn't get to see those guesses. Who was some of the guesses?
Well, they thought it was you. Somebody mentioned it was you. Which I'm like, yeah, it should be Tracy though, but I'm sure she doesn't want to be on the podcast quite yet.
She's been on time.
I've saw Paul Sirk. Somebody said it was probably going to be somebody strange. Some comment like that. I think I saw.
It's a little quick for that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a little strange. Then also somebody brought up Paul Sirk. So. Without further ado,
well, I'm gonna block you there. Oh, after 23 years of you and I kind of hanging out and being around each other, 20 years of racing and stuff, there has to be a lot of stuff that goes into picking that first guest. There's a lot of people that would be up there, probably thinking, why aren't I the first guest? So before you even tell me why did we end up having to pick this guy?
I think
I just left as a guy, didn't I?
I think we were paid.
We were paid. Okay.
No, I think that you and I were both brainstorming, it was dear, that we both individually were thinking about who should be the first one. It came down to this individual. He's been a big part of the series. He's even before the series started, he's been a part of both of our lives. So I think it was a no-brainer on this one. Unfortunately, it was many other people have been involved in the series and helped get it to where it is today. And we're going to have those people on a future podcast, but this one was a little unique for this guest.
I guess if we're going to tell stories, it has to be this one.
Yes, it is.
Who is it, Chris?
So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on. I know we got to increase the budget for this podcast so we can actually get some audio sound effects, right? Have to work that with the accountant. But our first guest is none other than Paul Sirk.
Paul Sirk.
I call him.
How did I get here?
I think I came up with a nickname this week. We'll see if it sticks for you. Calling you the Godfather.
I'm not sure about Godfather. That's yeah, I guess old man, grandpa. I'm not that, and I'm not in a big hurry. I'm looking forward to it someday. But no. Thank you guys for having me. Paul Sirk here. In case you don't know my name.
But yeah, before we go ahead and get on, Paul, you have been involved with the series for the last 20 plus years, and you've raced in all 20 years. You've been involved with the series.
Yep.
You've been part of not only have you raced, you've also been part of the track crew. So you've gone out there, you set up the track, you dedicate some weekends before we actually officially race to get everything set up so we have a nice layout that everybody's going to enjoy. And I think having that race perspective, you kind of, when you're setting up the track, you kind of make either something challenging or you have the mindset to tell Andy that he doesn't know what he's doing. And you come along and you fix something so it's right and nobody gets hurt.
Along those lines, yes. That's one of the challenging parts is getting the track set up. It's evolved over the years. We're in one session now, so we have to make sure that everything's safe and challenging, but not undoable for all skill levels. When we had two sessions going on, we'd throw some afternoon stuff in that I don't want the C riders to be on, maybe perhaps younger juniors and things like that. Seeing some changes, and everybody's getting a little better every year, and same thing with the kids. It's maybe we're not in the right spot here to talk about this, but my first time actually helping set up the track was Decatur City the first year. Mm-hmm. And I remember this little bump, I would call it now. And we were really debating whether the kids could go over this little bump. And I mean, by today's standards, it's truly a bump.
Yeah.
And we didn't know whether the kids could handle that or not. And over the years, the tracks went up. The kids, we put it in there. They do it. They have no trouble with it. And that's one of the things I'm probably most proud of for setting up the track is helping evolve the kids in our series to get them ready for the next level of riding.
Good. Well, and you're also, speaking of riding / racing, you're a 3-time champion with the series. You're 2009 plus 40 champion, and also 2019 and 2022 plus 50 class champion.
Yeah.
A little bit about that. How's those jackets in your closet?
In a good way, I don't think of myself as a real competitive guy when I'm out there racing. I guess I've done it for a little while now, and sometimes we get lucky, and I found that I've really enjoyed my classes all the time. There's always a group of people in your class you get to clicking with, and you enjoy racing with them. You're competitive out on the track, and afterwards it's a great conversations afterwards, and maybe a little time to hang out afterwards too, and beforehand, and you're looking out for each other out there too.
Well, that's what it's about. Good thing that you say that, because your biggest competitor right now in the plus 50 class is Joe Lutz. So you and Joe have some history together.
Joe and I have a lot of history together. I remember Joe back in his 2-stroke days having that little smell good little stuff in his gas back there.
Yep.
Even though it smelled good, even though you get kind of irritated by the sound of the 2-stroke, listening to that for quite a while. But Joe and I, we've raced together for a long, long time. Our probably biggest competition between Joe and I is honestly who can get off the line second to last rather than last.
I was just getting ready to ask you. You said you get along with all your competitors. Did you start that procedure by saying, "Hey, I'm gonna let all you guys go first, and then I will come from the tail"?
I don't bother telling them. I just let them think that. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you know, it's especially for the new guys. I'm not going to give them, any inside information there.
Chris, I know
I'm not ready to go most of the time. I'll be honest.
Chris, I know you're not down at the starting gate all the time, but I don't know if we did it this year, but in the past we've always said plus 50 and Paul,
Oh,
just so we know he's in that same class. So when one class takes off, no one else takes off when Paul does. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So
Right.
to keep it clear.
Yeah. I don't want to be, blowing past B and A class and get them. Yeah. No.
So, Paul. So I think, Paul, obviously, I want to make sure it's clear. I mean, obviously, you're a first guest ever to be on here. I think that says something. I just also want to be clear, Chris. I don't know if you mentioned it. The original guest couldn't be on here. That's why we had to go to Paul, right?
Right. And I gave Chris $23 so I could be first.
23, not 16, huh?
Nope, not 16. It did. I tried 16, but he wanted more.
Wouldn't work.
He had to print that shirt out and make sure the world knew about Diner Time.
So did he throw a shirt in with that too?
No, he put it on himself.
I heard those are going to be pretty popular shirts this year.
Yeah, I think they will be. Yeah, I think they're probably going to be on the back of the cruise shirt.
That's a good idea, Paul.
Please don't tempt him on that.
Yeah, and you know what? That $23 will help you spend a little of that towards that.
There you go.
Goes a long ways.
Yeah.
So also there's a couple other points I want to touch on, Paul, that we briefly talked earlier this week. Your whole family's been in the series. Both your boys and even your wife's made a surprise race appearance once or twice. She's run in a side-by-side with who again?
With Jared Whitlatch and also Danny Graber.
All right. Happy belated birthday, Jared. I noticed it was yesterday.
I saw that. Yeah.
Good timing.
Yeah. I started off right away, and then it came to the banquet, and I can tell you it was 2008 because I just bought a new four-wheeler for myself. Yeah, why wouldn't you?
What did you buy?
Pretty popular.
Oh, well, that was the KTM at that time.
Okay.
Previous to that, I'd started the series with the Warrior, and then I upgraded to the Polaris 500 Predator, the Troy Lee version. Oh, there it is. Yes, sir. Yep.
So back in the archives, we found this little.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yep. I'm totally surprised it's not black and white, but
this will almost do. Yeah, but it shows orange, and I'll go back that I wanted red, but this machine here was a special thing that Van Wall had, and somehow Andy had put together a thing with HMF, I think, back in the day, and it had a pipe on it. So I thought I better have that one with the pipe on it. And maybe the flex bars were on there too at the time. Yeah, I think so. And
also
so I ended up with that.
The power mads were on there.
Well, yes, they were. And I'll be honest with you, still got them. They're still the same power mads I'm racing right now. Yep.
So that was actually a showpiece at one of the biggest power sports shows in the country, Chris, at the dealer show out in Indianapolis. Yep. That was featured out there in one of the booths and stuff. And we didn't tell anybody it was going to be Paul's, or they probably would have wanted signatures and stuff. And
I don't think we had just that knowing what was going to happen. Yeah. Sure.
Yep. So.
Yep. Well, I bought the KTM, and then we went to the banquet, and my boys had finally succumbed to the pressure of peer pressure from one Brock Kiner, actually, who they'd kind of grown up with there already, and they decided on the way home that they wanted to race. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. I have a Suzuki LT50.
Nope.
Not gonna let them on a track with that. Don't let any kids on the track with that. Hello. Um, so I ended up buying a couple more four-wheelers, and both my boys raced for Nicholas, my oldest, raced for 8 years, and then Adam raced for 10 years. So they were both in their junior class. My wife Ricky got involved with taking pictures early, somewhere along the line. I don't remember where that happened, but she was one of the people that took pictures trackside and would download them and give them to people. And then she ended up getting an opportunity and got asked to ride along in the side by side with Jared, and she thoroughly enjoyed that. She had a good time there. So it's been a family event for us. It didn't start off really right away that way. I came to the races by myself pretty much better part of that first year, just like everybody else. We had a four-wheeler and a pickup. And then here we go. We have a big toy hauler camper and sort of have one. It's a better part of one. I'm not sure how long it's going to make it before it goes poof on me, but it's just the rest of that, it's been a great thing for my kids and I and my family, and I think we've gotten lifelong friends from the whole thing.
Yep, and we can't forget to mention your sister, who also is always at the.
Hi, Amy.
Look at that brotherly sister love. So Amy's also part of the series. She's been taking pictures for quite a while in the series.
She has, yes.
So family affair.
Yeah.
So Paul, let's go. One thing we was going to talk about today was not even necessarily our series yet. It was people ask all the time about, tell me about the history of the series. And we're going to get to the history of the series. But tonight we're talking a lot, Chris, about actually how it even came apart, how the core group come together. How did we meet? How did we get mad at each other the first time? Why we started doing this, How did Chris get to be a part of this? There's a lot of big questions here. So we got to answer. But, really, Chris, it all comes back to one thing. What was the one thing that brought us all together in the very, very beginning?
It was the North River Ridge Runners ATV club based out of Indianola, Iowa.
Who's those little ones up there?
I can point them out. How about you, Andy?
Well,
look at that, Andy. You got the tall kids there.
That's why I'm just going to have to say I'm having an issue with pointing them out because it appears like mine are taller than yours.
Yes.
It's been many years since I've seen that.
Yes.
And Brady's tallest. That's another thing that's a big surprise. So
I don't think that's quite the same anymore, but yeah.
What a picture that is. North River Ridge Runners was a ATV club just for literally enthusiasts based out of Indianola, basically right around Carlisle, Indianola area, Warren County. Had club members from, all over, mainly around the Des Moines area, southern, central Iowa and stuff. But that was really just what brought us all together. Just really came down to the love of riding, and I'll be honest, a lot of people think I've been riding my whole life, just because we're doing what we're doing, My first four-wheeler I got in 99 or 2000. It was a 300 Prairie. And that's because I went out on the ATV club with them to go for a ride. And a guy loaned me a four-wheeler to go riding. And I couldn't think of anything for about the next week till I could get back out there and ride. And that club was just all about that right there, helping people, getting people in, getting them started. And Paul, I can't remember how you got started in that one.
I came into the club later than you guys, actually. I probably about 2003 is about when I joined the club. The club had a member that had a riding area, and I went down to that, joined with a neighbor, Lonnie Hoyt brought me along, and the big story of there was I met Chris McKean there.
Yes.
And if none of you realize, but Chris used to be a racer.
Yep.
And my first impression and the whole thing there was that this guy's sitting over the side getting ready to ride, and he's pulling on these long socks, pulling them all the way up. I mean, he's got these nice fancy boots, and like, wow, this guy must be fast. He's a racer, And I'm not saying he wasn't, but there's Chris looking pretty professional in some of his race gear, and we rode at that place down by Humiston that day, and that's when I joined the club. Yeah.
Chris, how did you come about?
I joined the club about 2001. You guys were already you were already there, Andy, when I think you were actually the president when I joined in the club.
And I got a lot of stories for you of 2001 too. So,
oh, great! It's all the time we have today on this podcast. I feel like you two are going to double team me here.
Yeah.
So
did somebody invite you to come, or did you just hear about it? How'd that happen?
So I was riding four-wheelers, probably places I shouldn't have been back 2000, late 2000, 2001. I had an accident. I'll be the first one to admit I was riding where I shouldn't have been on some city streets in a small town. I had a pretty good accident. Pretty much spent a couple days in the hospital. Split my head open pretty good. I wasn't wearing a helmet. So, that's kind of why I'm pretty big on safety now. And we'll get into another story that kind of has affected me over the years. So that's kind of where I get from the scoring perspective. You want to see safety. So, yeah. So after my bad accident, I got, after that, I decided I probably should be riding more safe and found the club. I don't know how, maybe a search of some sort back then, but knew you guys were around. So I came down to a meeting, liked what I saw, and we started just having fun ever since, right?
It was. And that was just, life was, I think, much simpler back then. I think it was before any of us was, I had kids then. At least, I guess both of them would have been there when you came, but very young.
Yes.
And it just seemed like not because of not having kids or having kids. It just seemed like, we didn't have the social media. We didn't have any of that stuff. Nowadays, a club really it doesn't work. Everybody's just so busy and stuff. And back then we got at least take that one day a month, which seemed like a lot back then, but we rode all the time. And it's just amazing to me, to give the credit where credit's due, to bring that all together, because you're right. That's where it started, was the North River Ridge Runners, with all the parades and the riding, and we got into racing that way, and just a lot of friendship, right away.
Well, and briefly, we can talk about as far as the club evolving, our competition we used to have. So way before we even started thinking of having this race series, we had the ATV rodeos. So you guys want to briefly kind of mention kind of what those were about, kind of what events, maybe what permanent scar you have from that, Andy, from me.
There goes another story on Chris.
That's on Andy there. Go ahead,
buddy. So with the North River Ridge Runners, it just really came down to something that, just like the series, we wanted to bring something out there. We wanted to create something. And I think it blew up on us, again, a lot faster than we ever imagined. We had a club member over on Southwest 9th that gave us a place to do it. And we had a lot of membership that put a lot of effort into it. And, back then there really wasn't much promoting, it was putting flyers up and stuff. And it worked back then though. And I'll never forget, I think both you guys were there the very first one. Maybe Paul wasn't. I know Chris was, because Chris was a big part of that. But, we had an ATV rodeo is what we called it. But we had an obstacle course that was pretty cool. I mean, we went pretty good depth there, burying poles and digging holes and just all kinds of different stuff you would do that was a timed event. Then we had a drag. What do you call that? What's
Drag
it?
race.
Yeah.
Timed radar run.
Radar run. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had the police department actually came out one time and assisted with that. I think the one time, Chris, didn't we have that going down between that smooth grassy area between the corn?
Yep, we did.
We ran down there, and that was pretty cool. I'll never forget that. And then we had that little circle area track. We used to have that circle track, and a guy came out that used to be part of our club, Kelly Cordham, and he brought an excavator out there and dug that great big old hole for us. I think it was 100 foot long, roughly 20 feet wide. And then he put coffins down in the bottom. When I say coffins, he would take the excavator and take a claw out here and there and would offset them. And we had a big old mud pit, and we filled it up. And we were thankful to have a couple of the communities come out with fire trucks to help us fill it up. It was just a really cool thing how everybody came together back then. And man, do you remember that Saturday morning when we first did it? I was blown away. It's like cars kept coming and coming and coming and coming.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, and
we weren't expecting that turnout. We thought it was just going to be a fun club thing. And then, oh man, good competition ended up that day. I mean, that mud pit kind of stole the show towards the end.
Yeah.
I believe there was a pickup in there, was there not?
Yeah, there was. And I don't
one
think
point.
he'd probably want me to mention a name, but I do want to thank.
We know who it was?
No, something popped in my head that I said I wanted to thank, HVG and John Berg. For what they do and the entertainment he's gave us.
We appreciate
throughout
that.
the years.
Yeah.
So
right.
I'm not mentioning names on who that truck was, but I'll never forget that truck trying to make it through the mud pit.
Wasn't that like a brand new truck too?
I'm gonna let him tell that story.
Okay.
I don't know if insurance can still come after him or
okay.
Or what. That was a lot of fun, but I mean, isn't it ironic when you look at the people that are in there today racing and their families and stuff, and we go back to that ATV rodeo that we thought was going to be a little tiny fun thing, and actually see how many people has been in our race family since then and still is today. It amazes me on how much that really started and affected a lot of people.
Yep.
But
just
so we started on there, and I think we finished. I won't show it right now, but I do have a nice mark here where somebody was going to take a rope down and failed to take that rope down. And I didn't say your name, Chris. But,
I didn't either.
I still got my trophy on the back of my neck from those rodeos. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Were you backing up?
No.
Nope,
I was going what I called fast back then.
But you're time testing one of the events, and
exactly.
some rope was supposed to be taken down, and you're probably going full bore into it. Yeah.
Yep. Made a corner and yeah. But you know what? Again, that was so much fun. And Paul come in maybe after that one, but we did that ATV rodeo for probably 4 or 5 years. I know Pat Drotz was a huge help back then, in that rodeo and stuff. And it was cool how everybody came together. And that was probably outside of like sports, outside of, like your family getting together. That probably affected me more than a lot of things ever did in my lifetime, how people literally came together as a group, not a school group or anything, but just came together to have fun. And that blew me away for sure. So, but we started with the ATV club, and I'll never forget in that ATV club, we heard, one of our club members, past president, had a Yamaha Wolverine. And then there was other machines. Sportsman's were big back then, but I remember I went and bought my machine and I thought it was really cool. I ended up buying the wife a machine, which is still our Honda that we have today, the Rubicon. Give Honda a little quick pat on the back. Is you guys realize how many hours are on that machine that we bought brand new in 2001?
How many?
Ooh.
Almost 23,000 hours are on that machine. And I would say 9 out of 10 of them things were from the series, obviously, but we all know that thing gets left run like a diesel, half the time, where you forget where it's at. And we come back. Oh,
Andy,
she's still
your
going.
machine's still running 40 feet back. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
you had the Honda.
But yeah.
What else did you have? What was your first race machine?
2000, right there she is.
Oh, you had something like this?
That's it.
Look at that picture. Oh man.
Oh,
that's a flashback.
That's
where that was? Take a guess where that was.
I was really trying to figure this one out earlier today, and I could not figure out the background.
Fort Dodge.
Nope. We have never raced at this facility. Well, obviously I have.
Oh, I know where it is now. Millville.
Good. Yep.
No?
Millville, Minnesota, where they do the national outdoor at. But a good friend of mine, actually met him in the club, Mark Briggs, and his boy Sinjin. I have another picture I sure wish I would have got to you. It's Brady and Sinjin, which are the same age, sitting on the bleachers, the same size and everything, yelling at us, when we came by. It's just one of those really cool flashbacks. But yeah, that's me and the two boys there racing Millville. And going before that, Chris, I got to tell you where it all started was Scott Wilson and I at a race or at a club meeting. We were looking at dirt wheels back then and came across it. There's a race over here. I believe it was Tipton, Iowa. I think if I'm saying it right, it's up by Anamosa. And we thought, let's go up and try this. It's called a hare scramble. And we really didn't even know what a hare scramble was, to be honest with you, other than you raced in the timber. And so we drove up there. The wives went with us. The kids went with us. Neither one of us had ever done it. I remember we stayed in Anamosa that night, drove over to the race. And the biggest thing I remember, other than just how much fun it was that was the first year that the DS 650s came out. And if you guys remember, them things were as wide as Machina ever came out. And the club that was putting that on was a dirt bike club. And they basically just allowed the four-wheelers to come have a race. And there was probably only 20 of us there. But I got stuck. They did a parade lap, but I got stuck behind that DS 650. And by the time we got done with that parade lap, I couldn't hardly turn my machine because we had to lift it up, turn it sideways to get it through the timber. And obviously, after about 20 times, that guy never even went back out on the race. So, but learned a lot that day. We had so much fun. Scott and I came home, and I don't think either one of us could think about anything else but racing. And we started looking some stuff up. And I know that's when we talked to you, Chris, about, doing some races and going to look and talk about it. And then, I could go on for an hour on this, and I promise I won't. You can speed me up if I do, but the hare scrambles where we started literally got everything started. I mean, as far as the racing for us. But going back to the ATV club, we just lost a member of our four-wheeler family, an ATV family, just last year. If you guys remember, we lost Bob Fleege out of Fort Dodge, and Bob was a big part of the state club, and him and a couple guys really kept that going. But Bob was a big part of the 12 Hours of America that had came down there. And I'm sorry, I fast forwarded. He was helping with the TT races also. They had the national TT races with Tim Farr and Shane Hidd, and Doug Gus. I mean, all the biggest. And back then we didn't have social media, so all we had was magazines that we would stare at these guys and their machines, and it's like, oh my gosh. And that was the first time, if you remember, Chris, we actually went to a big race. And we got asked to go up there and help flag and do some different events with them. Why are you laughing, Chris?
Because I know what's coming my way.
Chris.
So let me tell you, Paul, we did a lot of fun things there this year up there. We had some guys from the club up there. That was really neat that Dan Clean, all them guys put the state convention or the state club together. We had all these clubs in Iowa, and some of them are still going today, thankfully, but the Fort Dodge club decided they were going to take us on a ride one night. So we go on a night ride, and I don't think Chris and I ever could have dreamed of it, but we ended up was going down to cross the Des Moines River. And Paul, there was 20 some of us And I can remember today that there were 6 of them that made it across the river because they'd done it before. All 6 of them were on Prairie 650s, and it was ugly. And I remember Jake Stratton floating down the river on his brand new 2001 Yamaha Raptor. He just floated down the river, and the rest of us was able to, I think the Cowies came back and got some, but at the end of that night, we had 6 of them sitting at one of the neighbors' places up there that actually owns part of our Fort Dodge track now. And we had him sitting up there in his shop, draining all the oil and water out of them, getting them all going and stuff. And how we didn't lose machines in that river, I have no idea. But the best part was the next day. The next day we're down there, and we'd already ran some races and stuff, and they were getting ready for the big races. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I had one of them come up and say, "Hey, Andy, would you start the races?" I said, "Sure, I'd do it." Well, Chris was standing right there, I think, and Chris like, "Andy, I'd really like to do that." So I'm like, "All right, Chris, go ahead and do it." So Chris goes out there, and he's doing really good. But back then there was you had to point to him and stuff. And if I remember right, there was a big handle you push down, and that dropped the MX gate, and they all took off. And that was a big deal. Some of our heroes were in that thing. Tim Farr. I mean, it's huge being able to be around them guys and actually to be a part of that. I was a little relieved that Chris said he wanted to do it in case there was an issue. It wasn't my fault. But about halfway through that, Paul, Chris, he's been known for this. He had all the brand new gear. I mean, it was as red could get, as white could get. And it was getting pretty hot that day. And Chris decided, I'm going to take off my jersey. And he's showing skin out there, and he's working his butt off, and he's getting tired. And as we all do sometimes, you don't realize how hot that sun is. And I don't know if you've been around Chris, but Chris doesn't usually hold a suntan all year long. He might be a little bit more on the pale side, maybe sometimes.
Yeah, maybe the pink side real quick.
Yeah, so we got done that night, and I don't know if any of us really realized what was going on because we were having so much fun, really.
Yeah.
But when we got done, I remember Chris grabbed his jersey, and I think that's about the time, maybe it's when he went to put it on, as Chris started talking in a foreign language. It had a lot of 4-letter words. And anyway, we started realizing that if you look at the handy up there in the corner, that's the caller that he was that night. And we made it back. A lot of our club was there. There's a bunch of campers and everything. We were just having fun around the campfire and stuff. And then we had Chris in his little Ford Ranger. He was sitting over there with the heat on because he was freezing from that sunburn, and he was eating his cereal, and he would not come out. Do you remember that, Chris?
I do. Those memories will live with you for a lifetime, or be told 100 times.
That was some good memories.
You'll probably never hear it again. It's probably done, Chris.
Okay, good. So you kind of mentioned the 12 hours, Andy. We've had, which I'm also seeing some comments from this side as well, that we did have some legends come to the 12-hour back in the day. Kind of, can you talk about that? I know that we attended the first couple of them. 12 Hours of America, I believe is what it was called back then, right?
Yep, exactly. And that was my first time participating in what I thought was one of the biggest races ever. Once again, the Doug Gus, and all them guys were there. One of my heroes of all time. I know Paul's heard about this gentleman because every time we go to Fort Dodge, what do I tell you in a certain spot, Paul?
Yeah, that's where you passed Mike Penland. Is that it?
I passed Mike Penland. I'll never forget that spot.
I know
we
where
read
it's
about
at.
Mike Penland for years and years. And to this day, every time I'm around somebody, Chris, out on the deal, I'll stop and say, you know what? Right here's where I passed Mike Penland. Now, I don't know if Mike Penland was stopped or something had happened, but Mike Penland obviously left me setting shortly after that again. But it always made a memory for me that I passed Mike Penland. So today, Mike's a great friend of mine. And, I appreciate every time I get to talk to him. He's a hero of the sport. But he's one of those guys that were there back then. I believe it was Team Kawasaki. we put a team together, Jason Mickelson and a gentleman from up in Waukon. And then Mark Briggs and we raced several times together that year and started racing together and everything. And Mark put a thing and a team together with Jake. I believe Jake Kelch was on his team. I can't remember the other one, but yeah, we just raced the 12-hour, and it was different than what you see today in the 10-hour. We raced 6 hours. We had our Le Mans style start. We raced 6 hours. Then they took a 2 or 3 hour break. And then you came back and started all over again. So you lost all the time that you had made up. For us, I think it probably helped us that we caught up with people, including Pinland. Yeah, that was really tough to get your body back going again, to restart after setting for that long. And it was tough. But, there's a lot of things that came up, when we start talking about our series later. Chris, do you remember the corporation that we went and talked to that day? We went and looked at the awards, the cool awards they were handing out, those nice plaques.
Oh, yeah, Moto Tees.
Moto Tees was there and had shirts for sale and stuff. And we went over and talked to them that day. And that was a company that we called after we decided to do the series, and still with them guys today. So what a great company we chose there to be a part of, But yeah, that 12 hours was cool for a lot of reasons.
That 12 hours, the first year of the series, the second 12 hours on the other side of the river, on the east side of the river, was going. I remember that.
Would have been the third year.
Third year. Okay, there we go.
The first 2 years were in where we race right now. Used to be called Mineral City.
Mineral City. Yep.
Yep. So, but yeah, the first 2 years were there. I raced in the first one, helped at the second one, helped in the third one over there. I know Doug wouldn't like me to admit that, but I remember right after the start of the third year across the river, we were all so excited that, that's when ATVs had a lot of support, and Doug Gust had that. How do you say that? Yoka Shamira. I always say that wrong.
Oh, everybody could say it if you wouldn't have tried to ruin it for us.
Right.
Yeah.
But he had that big semi there, and everybody's excited to see Doug Gust, and he took off and made about a quarter mile and was stopped, and we all stopped to see what was going on. And he wasn't in the best mood, of course, after everything that had been done, but there's literally a silver dollar hole in the side of that case. It had just blown it. He was done for the night. So I tugged Doug Gust in there, and it was pretty neat getting to help all them people. But it was a super cool race. Doug
raced with us one time.
A couple times. Yeah.
Was it a couple? Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, I got a question for Chris. Tell us about your racing pre-series stuff a little more.
Oh man, I was racing wise, the biggest part of the club, we always participated in the rodeos, and we always got to remember some good trips Andy and I've kind of taken on that. We argue where it was, but I believe it was Morrison. We did a double header weekend one time. Went to Morrison, Illinois, raced on a Saturday, drove to his parents Saturday night, got up and what was it? The Sunday Brooks, wasn't it? Yep. Very first time at Brooks. So, oh man, that the Morrison, Illinois race didn't turn out the way that I anticipated. I think I got my first concussion ever at that race. They're racing through the woods, and somebody didn't cut the trees low enough to the ground, and I hit a stump that was sticking up about 12 inches off the ground, and pretty well endoed myself a couple times. Took me a while to get up and going again, but man, I remember Andy passing me on the second lap, and I was like, I'm done. I didn't have motivation. But
that'd ruin it for you, wouldn't it?
Good times.
But hey, in all honesty, though, I'm pretty sure that you passed me the second lap the very next day at Brooks.
At Brooks.
Yeah.
I mean, some good. I wish I had the trophy still, but that's kind of those have been moved away, and now we display all the boys' trophies. So You know, if believe it or not, my boys are, as they say, officially retired from racing as they go on and adventure pretty heavy into sports these days. But we kind of focus on them. So we've kind of turned the garage into a shrine for them, so they kind of know what their accomplishments have been. Even our daughter did electric races, so she's got a spot out there in the garage. She hangs all her medals. So it's kind of a family affair that when we're all out there all summer long, we can kind of look back and see the history, and we'll have discussions. It's kind of cool when you have all those, which I know, Paul, you do as well. In your garage, you have all your and your boys' awards all up.
I'll be honest, Chris, I got through 2008 hanging them up. We have, we'd go through phases where we wouldn't get much for plaques, and then we will, and so I'm not really caught up on that, but those are neat things. And with my family, it was kind of neat. Both my boys have graduated high school. One's out of college, the other one will be done with college here this spring. When you have parties for that kind of stuff, you bring out some of those things and display some things, and it is neat to see those. It's a little history within the series too. But the accomplishments that the kids have made, and we're probably going off cue here, but the kids portion of the whole racing is still something that I just thrills me. I mean, if it wasn't for the kids and the excitement you see there, I don't,
I think that's
what makes it worth the while, building the tracks and helping out and stuff.
Yeah, I think we're all on that page. I think the kids kind of is our little soft spot that, they, as we always often claim, they are the future.
They are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it starts, I get a kick out of electric races. So lots of times if we have some time, or if there's people at the track, we'll certainly try to get the electric races going. My shameless plug, if you have one or have a kid that wants to do an electric race, let me know, and we will get them on the schedule for this year.
Absolutely.
But not to kind of like jump all around here, there's one other thing that we did as a club. Back when it was popular and they came to the Des Moines area, Arena Cross. Just because I kind of want to touch on a story there, but as a club, I remember doing it 3 or 4 years in the old vets.
We did a lot of traveling too.
We did do some traveling when they needed us or needed a crew. We'd always hop in and do it. It was long hours, but man, it was fun. You're right up close. Yeah. Well, pro day was fun. Amateur day, not so much. So back in the old.
You remember, Chris, though, how I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them now by no means, but when they used to come here, that was one of the few times that Vets was completely sold out. You had to get your tickets way in advance. It was so electrifying, I mean, it was so cool, and, you look back then, a couple of our sponsors today with like Storm Lake Honda, look how big they were back in, and all that stuff. Tylube, huge in that kind of stuff. But that was really fun. I mean, we had a lot of fun traveling, probably did some stuff we shouldn't have traveling,
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. That day when we have all those riders, and I can't even remember how many there was. I know the amateur day, I mean, it was just almost silly to do it in one day, and I think wasn't it Racer Productions that we were working with back then? Or I shouldn't say that because I'm not sure, it might have been a separate episode back then, but it was just really cool being able to see that from, behind scenes, like backstage, and how that all worked and doing the, doing the flagging and stuff. But I think all the stories always came around, Chris McKean. Tell us the good stuff first.
Well, I've had some really close calls that, if I can talk, start over, because there's the one that's in the back of my mind right now that we'll talk about. But it was really fun. We're all up close. I've had some really close calls. Got a chip out of my elbow that's missing. I had a guy that I knew he wasn't going to make the double coming into coming towards me, and just the nick of time I was able to get out of the way before he took me out and damaged the both metal doors behind me. Left a dirt bike imprint in the doors. Never seen it before, but it was a little dangerous, but also a lot of fun.
Wasn't that imprint you're talking about literally like 50 feet off of the track?
Yeah, it was quite a ways out there. That when you kind of see that things you're up close when we're flagging, we've got the experience over the years that I could see the throttle, and when you get a little nervous, what do? You pull that throttle back a little bit more, and he was off. Luckily, he was fine. Machine was fine. Elbow took a couple weeks to get better, but I think that was like our first year doing that arena cross.
Didn't you used to get some bruises on your chest from the handlebars and the corners?
I've got some bruises too. Yeah. Amateur day was a lovely day.
Paul, I know Paul wasn't there, but we really care. Pat Drotz was a big deal. Pat's brother was helping us a lot back then. But we always appreciated everything Chris did back then, and we always made sure that we put him in the safest spot, as you can tell.
Yes, they did.
So Chris, I know, and I obviously want to keep everything positive on a on a podcast like this, but I think it's important for you to tell the story about what happened at one of them arena crosses and truly what it still means to you today and how it affects you today.
Well, I think it was the last arena cross that was inside Vets. Amateur day, everything was going well. I'm pretty sure you can probably Google it. It's probably somewhere still out there in the news outlets, but I was looking at working over on the rhythm section, and amateur gentleman or kid at the time wasn't wearing a chest protector. So, and amateurs, they always shave off the jump so they're not as big as what they would do for the pros. He was just came in a little too hot and heavy and total endoed himself and the machine into the face of the jump, and pretty much on impact. He
That's a tough one. Chris seen some things there that nobody ever wants to see. And that's one thing that when you see that stuff, you've been around racing your whole life. Just something that I don't think anybody realizes, that you can't get that out of your head. And it's a hard pill to swallow. Chris, I know it's still stuff to talk about it, but I'm glad you shared it with us because, I know, Paul, what we're talking about here, but a new AMA rule last year was that the kids all have to have a chest protector. And, I've had some people say, are you going to mandate that? Absolutely. And it's probably way past due of actually mandating that. It does look like that's another $75 to race, but it's not. That's the best insurance policy you can get. So I know at a young age, you've seen pictures of there when my boys were real little. They started riding when they were 2. They started racing when they were 4, both of them. Paul, I think yours was about the same age and stuff. I know when my kids did it, and Chris, I know it comes back to that situation. Mm-hmm. I always told them first thing, here's a machine, here's all this, we got them gear. They'll both tell you right now that if I ever caught them without a helmet, chest protector, and boots on, they would have never rode again. Not while I'm there.
Nope, and don't let them practice. Don't let them even leave the garage without that stuff. It's when they ride all the time with it, it's nothing different.
Mm-hmm.
So I go out to help on the track once in a while if I'm broke down, and I feel kind of naked without the chest protector on. Safety first on those kids. If you want to be old and dumb, that's your prerogative, but keep those kids safe. Yep.
But Paul, you just mentioned something there that's so important. We have a lot of new people coming in this year. We've had a lot of new numbers given out to youth, 4 years old, 70s, 90s kids, all the way up to what's a first year racer, or anybody coming in new. And you just said something that doesn't get said near enough. People tend to get that stuff when they come to a race and put it on. But when you put that stuff on to go to a race, you think that's like when you're going to get hurt. But one, you're uncomfortable because you're not practicing in it. It's so important to actually put it in there. And, I can't say that fancy word right now, but just like you are at the race, you're doing everything exactly the same as you're racing when you're riding, and you get used to that stuff, and that really came into play when we started getting the nicer neck braces. I know my kids were very uncomfortable when they first got it. Once they rode with it, for 10, 12 hours,
you do 2 races with it and you're okay. If nothing else with those kids, get a neck roll on them. Don't skimp on your kids' safety.
So sorry to get all choked up, but it brings back memories I don't like to experience again. So it's like with scoring, I'm big on tethers. So if you coming through scoring and I don't see a tether attached, I try to stop you and get you get that reattached. Let's get back to the
hey guys, you're mentioning flagging. We also did some outdoor flagging for some motocross stuff. And I remember doing it for a couple of years, I think, for sure. Maybe not, but at the Farm MX track where we had our first race. I had a little thing. I know one year set up with Dave was the owner and operator at the time, and he let the club use the track, and we helped him flag. And I enjoy that. I thought that was a good time. It was. I've got one of the guys that I believe is a sponsor this year. I remember watching him as a young motocross person. I want to be careful how I said that there. And he'd grown up around it, and I remember watching a big old C-Class come taking off, barreling up the hill towards me, and I'm like, all right, they're 12 wide, and there's room for about 6 of them at most. And I remember seeing him kind of get run over. He'll know who he is. And I figured out later on that I knew who actually ran him over. There's no place to go, but he was just fine because he had his helmet and his gear on. But that was good times and stuff we did as a club there too. I think we did some of that even after the series had started. I believe at that point. I'm just sure of it too.
Yeah, no, you're right. We definitely did. And I'm gonna make a plug here because it's so important to me, but we've never done anything that wasn't AMA, American Motorcycle Association. And it's very easy to question that sometimes, but when you hear stories like what Chris was telling and stuff, and you see that stuff on a national level, and then they bring that safety down to a local or state level. And it's a way to, make sure that our races are safe. And one thing that always gets me, and I talk to people, and whether it be grandparents or parents, especially first years out there, a neat stat is when you think about how many kids are hurt on a Friday football game compared to being hurt at one of our races, or actually all year at the races, because our guys all have the safety equipment on. You might get a couple bruises here or there, you know what I mean? But we've got a really good track record of those kids staying safe, and half of that has to do with mandating all that safety equipment that we're talking about. But definitely has to start at home, that's for sure.
So Andy, real quick here, because we're running short on time and we want to get to questions. What conversation?
It's not my fault, Chris. It's not my fault.
Not this time. Can you tell us a little bit about that crucial conversation that you had with your wife, Tracy, on what came apart or came about for the series?
Yeah, so I'm gonna really have to speed this up because this could literally be an hour-long conversation. So I am gonna shorten it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a big part of it right there, Chris.
Okay.
So what happened was we were at a race. There were several of us. We'd gotten a group, and it was all based out of our North River Ridge Runners. And we'd went to a race. And after that first one that we went to, we were looking everywhere trying to find any races. And there just really wasn't in the Midwest. There was hardly any races at all. And there's one series that dabbled around in Iowa, Illinois, down south,
Walk
up
On.
north and stuff. Walk On. Yeah.
There we go.
So we were at this race, and this Maynard tells a bigger story that most people would ever know. And that was a fact that when we were, and I'm not knocking any series, it's just part of the history of our sport. Okay. And I love dirt bikes. My kids rode them their whole years growing up. But when we would go to these races, we were kind of the filler. It was dirt bike races, and then they allowed us to race, basically, is what happened. And this one race, that particular race that we were at, we had gotten there, my wife and I, and we just had the pickup with the fold down camper and stuff, and everything. And we gotten there. I think it was like Thursday night to set up and have some fun. And we had like 5 or 6 other guys there. And we got asked on Friday evening. We didn't get asked. We got told to move because we were ATVs and we weren't supposed to be on the front row. This is all a true story. I'm not making a bit of this up. And obviously it didn't make us feel good, like a second-class citizen, I guess you'd call it. And so we picked our stuff up and moved, and some more of our people showed up, and we were parked second, third row back, and down quite a ways at that point. And we went up to race that day. So excited. I think it was like a huge 13-mile course, something like that, and it was one heck of a course. And we sat there. We were supposed to start at, I think it was like roughly 1:00. And I get crap all the time, as Chris has already showed on his shirt there. But so I'm not going to be one to normally bark about being late. But when I say being late, I think it was like 1:00 that we were supposed to have started. And by 3:00, literally 2 hours afterwards, we were like, are we going to race today? And about that time is when they decided to send the dirt bikes out, their pro class or the afternoon class, for a practice run. So at this point, they told us just to go sit down. They'd let us know when we're going to race. And I hope Ryan's listening. I doubt it, but Ryan Jimenez was right there with me. And this is true story. We were a little upset, obviously, about the situation. And we decided, let's go back and chill at the pits. So we got a long walk to go after we'd had a good spot early. We're walking down there. I'll never forget his dog, Trinity, a bulldog, which what got me started a lot on the bulldogs. We're walking back there, and something on the way back just made me kind of joke around. And I asked Ryan, I'm like, so are you going to race the Iowa Series next year? And he's like, Iowa Series? I said, yeah, the Iowa ATV Hare Scramble Series. And he's like, sure, where's that at? And I'm like, I don't know yet. But I said, we need to start a series, just literally having fun with it. That's a first time. And literally the only reason that was ever addressed that way was obviously the Iowa, so we didn't have to travel, is what popped in my head. ATV, as you can see on the thing, I wanted it highlighted so that they know that it's ATV. And then I just said, Hare Scramble Series, I guess, And we went back and was joking around. I think I mentioned it there in the pits. My wife would never heard of it, nothing. We ended up going and racing that day. The race didn't go well for some people. And at the end of that race, I literally had to go out and pull 2 of our racers back that day. That was probably 4 to 5 miles out in the timber because there was nobody there to help pull them out. They just said, if you want them, go get them. So we went to get them, and we got back, and we all just felt like, maybe we didn't belong here. And started talking on the way home that day. We got to talking, and I think my wife said something like, "Did you have fun today?" And I said, "Well, sure, I had a blast. Why?" She was good because this is what it cost us, and I'm holding the plaque. That plaque's nothing compared to what Moto Tees puts out. And I said, "Well, fine. If you don't want to do this," I said, "then why don't we just start our own series so we don't got to travel so much?" And I thought I was going to get slapped. And she said her exact words, "How are we going to do this?" And I looked at her like, "Uh-oh, the window's open." "Are you serious?" And she goes, "Well, how would we do this?" And I've always been one to carry a notebook and write ideas down because I forget them and don't do anything with them. And so, true story, my wife picked up the pad, and I said, let's make two rows here. I said, the first row, I said, I'm going to tell you what I want to see in a series, or what I want to see when I get to the track. And then I want you to write down what you want to see when you get to the track, being like the wife or the significant other, a girlfriend or something. And true story, the first thing that I wrote happened to be the exact same thing that she wrote. And it became a big deal to everybody that was on ATVs as soon as you walk through the gate. And when you walk through the gate at those races, and again, I'm not knocking them because I give them credit for us getting started, honestly. And there was never anything. There was never ATVs on our trophies, on our plaques, nothing. So what you see right there on the screen was the very first thing that we ever did for this series after it became legit. We were going to start it. And that was, we bought this, had this banner made, and we used that same banner for, I think, probably the first 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
We still got it today. We got an updated one now with after my mom passed, we got one with my mom and dad on there that's always ran the gate. But this is a huge sign because this right here told the whole story to us when my wife and I would see it. We wanted every single person that came in the door to see welcome ATV race fans. And we tried to always make sure that was up. So that's truly the very, very beginning of the actual series itself, was that right there. That race, that conversation that was supposed to have been just a funny, which has gotten me in trouble before. And then just a simple conversation with, I don't say this too often, but pretty lucky that I got the wife that I do that's understanding and listening and stuff. And I think if I asked her that today, she would probably have opened the door and pushed me out, So, but yeah, so that's the quick version of how that happened. Yeah.
So after that, after the whole planning, we mentioned that the ATV club already, but it was a lot of planning, a lot of involvement from the club that kind of got the series going as well. And that kind of leads us up to the first race back in April of 2004. But we are running a little short on time. So, Paul, would you like to come back next week and kind of just talk about that first race?
Yeah, I've got a lot to say yet. I appreciate you guys having me. And I'll be back. And we're going to, why don't we pick it up there right where the series started, and we can tell some old war stories there. And
well, we can transition to how the club got involved and what the club did into the first race, and kind of some of those memorable events that happened first time.
Oh yeah.
So also, Paul, we are planning on our second official guest, right? Somebody from a family dynasty back in the day, we can call it. We won't spill who it is yet. We'll kind of like give a little build up to it. But I did see one of the family members was on here earlier and commented, so we'll have them on us next week.
You're not talking about Cirques again, are you? In the dynasty?
Yeah, I
was
see
one of his boys on
Nicholas there. was watching this earlier, and then
got
out to High in Seattle.
I've heard Iron Man. I've heard now The Godfather.
Yeah,
and now Chris is starting with this dynasty. Oh my!
Hey,
God.
I don't know. I don't think the dynasty's me though. I'm going to give a little hint out there.
Yeah, we'll just leave that out there. That this guest next week we have lined up. Raced with us forever.
Hey, maybe Hole Shot King. You can call me that.
Whole shot king.
Okay.
That's like a
So,
dad joke.
Yeah. So we did have some racers. We kind of skipped over this and didn't mention it yet, but we did see the first GNCC round 1 race happen last weekend.
How about that?
Right? So we did see, and some of us were keeping track of those racing. So I've just kind of got a little ticker going across the bottom, congratulating those that did race that we know of. So if you are racing an event outside of our series, let Andy or myself know. We're more than happy to post it so everybody kind of knows, kind of like a well-being, I guess you can say. Yeah, and we'll share it with everybody else.
And Chris, I'm sorry, go ahead. My bad.
No, go ahead. I know kind of where you're going to go, so go.
Yeah, and I think this is important. And I've been asked so many times, the Heartland Challenge, we tend to ask people like where their home series is and stuff. And behind the scenes, I've been asked so many times, why do you talk about these other series? Why do you excited to see your racers go to the GNCC or go to, a series in this state or series in that state,
Yeah.
And here's the thing. This is probably the absolute biggest question I get every year. Why do you only do 7 races? And Paul, I'm pretty sure, knows the exact answer for this. Help me if we do 13 races.
No, he's already pushing it with 7.
But no, the reason that we only do 7 races is very simple. We want to welcome everybody to the races as a family. We want everybody there as a family. The night before and the night after the races are probably the most important thing of the whole weekend. But with that being said, as life happens, Paul's went through raising 2 kids during this whole time of the series. I've went through raising 2. Chris, you're in the verge of doing 3 of them right now,
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of stuff that happens, whether it be sports or school or there's just all kinds of different stuff. Graduations, birthdays, weddings, when that stuff happens, we don't want that to impose where you can't do some of that stuff because you're tied to a series. We want you to be able to enjoy life as a family. We want little Joey to be able to play ball and be in show choir, and everything else that might be 4-H, be in his school activities and stuff, and not have to be saying, okay, I'm either going to race or doing something else because I can't do both. So that's why we do 7 races. You look at these names at the bottom, like Vanderpool and Burroughs and Berg and Carroll and all these guys. Those are the guys that are going out there, especially in the beginning of the year, and they're getting extra time in. Man, we're proud of them for doing that. We're proud of even being a part of them wanting to be able to go do that, and come back. And it's just one of those things where as a family, we want to stay as a family. We never want it to be the only thing that the family does together. Mm-hmm. And I'll cut it off because I could just keep going.
Yeah, you could keep going.
I'm sorry, but yeah,
you gotta mention right there. One of our track guys is out there, raced that too. He snuck out there and didn't tell anybody. Old Brent
didn't even know he was going.
No, he's all secretive. I don't know what's going on there, but I'm expecting
that extra training in.
Really good.
Yep.
What do we got up next, guys?
So up next, we just kind of jumping on over, looking at Ask Andy time, or the Ask Andy segment part of the podcast. So Andy, here's a funny one. We'll start out with that. Something lighthearted to get this going for question time.
What is it here?
So a question for Andy. Since you fellows were talking kinder time, does Tracy only let you run behind schedule during the race weekends, or does she give you free reign the rest of the time too?
Free reign.
I don't know if she gives me free reign or she's just given up. But I will say this: this is what I'm holding on to. We've tried to take people's time and more consideration. Last year, there's only very few races. that we got started late on, and actually some of them were early. And at the end of the day, for the most part, I think the worst thing last year was maybe 15 minutes late at the end of the day. And we did some fun stuff, doing more fun stuff this year, and I'll take that any day. So, but I think everybody truly knows when it comes down to it. I don't think it's a surprise that usually we all know it's Tracy's fault. So I just kind of take the rap for it.
Oh my. I think we're going to have Tracy on the next podcast here.
It's big shoulders there, buddy.
So when we were talking about the club stuff here. Oh, everything now questions are flying in here now. So Sinjin actually says his dad might still have some of the old flyers sitting around. Sinjin, if that's still true, if he has one laying around, I'd love to see one. Also, Sinjin, Andy, Sinjin was here while you were talking about the picture of him and Brady. Maybe we can show that or send it off to Sinjin so he can see that. Good times to see some of these young adults now. Back in the day, they were just little things.
Yeah, I can truly say that with Mark, Sinjin's dad, and my boys and them, the traveling, and I could talk for hours on that, how things got started, and it was just a lot of fun there. So I'll definitely share that picture with him.
Okay, so I just kind of see everybody's kind of commenting and chatting with each other in the chats. I think we have kind of something to discuss, right, Andy? Some things have been brewing all week long. We're going to open up the floor to you to try to keep it short because we are running a little long currently. If you want to go ahead and make your announcement.
Sure, I'll keep it short. This is very simple. I'll say this is we try to do things the right way. Sometimes it may not look like that. So a lot of stuff kind of goes in behind the scenes. There's just a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And we try to walk that line on the right side all the time. And you know what, if we don't, so be it. We make mistakes and we're going to learn from it. And so this time it really came up about the utilities. Just so everybody knows, I guess the history of that is it was brought up to us. We went long in a writers meeting. A rules meeting at the banquet. If anybody that was there knows that we went right up to the very start of the banquet. We had to shut her down to get to the banquet in time. And then basically I forgot to bring up a couple things that was on the list that had been brought up to me. So at the end of the banquet, I clearly announced that we were going to start taking a look at those and try to get it out there as quick as we can. And it's not an easy decision on some of that stuff, and where not everybody's always going to be happy with it, And the nice part is we had a lot of people called and wanted to get some input, and it created some conversations with other people that, we might not have been able to have that conversation. And it got pretty deep in some of those conversations, and the nice part is we kept them all positive, and we kept the I'll call it like the static, the white noise. We kind of kept it aside, and just tried to focus on what really worked for everybody. So there's no right answer in any of this stuff. It's actually a big deal. We don't have the numbers to increase the classes for the utilities right now. However, in hindsight of what we did, it was voted to not allow them to race in the age classes or the skill classes. And so by doing that, it did create a situation. We do look at it. We have guys that's wanting to run the plus 40 and the plus 50. And so we started looking at the whole list of ideas and opportunities there. And not saying that we still need 3 classes unless the numbers grow, but we're willing to make sure that there's a place for people to actually go to and participate if they want to race that utility class. So we did a lot of talking. If something wasn't in a positive fashion, we just decided we're not even going to focus on that. We focused on the positive side of things, talking to people. And after talking to a lot of people, Chris, I came up with a decision, and it's something that again, it may not be right, but it might be something that we can build on. And Chris and I have been talking. I put none of this on Chris. I put it all on myself. But maybe the rules and stuff needs to be done a little differently. And we have a rules committee that we talked about in the last podcast about the UTVs and the side-by-sides, and I'm excited to see how that works. And now moving forward, looking at maybe changing the way we do things and the way we bring stuff up and the way that's addressed to people, and make sure that people know about it. I mean, it was brought to our attention, a couple people that, didn't even know what was going on because they weren't at the banquet and stuff. And so I want to really thank those guys that took the time to talk and work through some stuff in a positive manner. And that helped us kind of decide. And so it's one of those times where we've got to make a decision roughly quick because we race here in a month and a half. We have maybe not even quite a month and a half.
43 days.
So with that being said, there's a lot of people needing to get graphics, the right plates and stuff. So with everything that we looked at, I made a decision, still talking I think I talked to 4 or 5 people just last night about this, still trying to make the decision and get them. And we're just going to make the decision and go with it for this year. And then for next year, we can be working at that and looking through it this year. And if you have a positive input, what I mean by that is moving forward in a positive way, not looking backwards. I don't want to talk any kind of negative stuff. So in the positive side of things, what we've decided to do is add a class for the utilities, and not sure exactly what we're going to call it. I'm going to leave that up to Chris. That's kind of his department, but it's going to be some type of a 4x4 senior class. Whether it's, I don't like the 4x4 because the other ones are called utility classes, unless we're going to change those classes. But so we're still looking at that, but basically we're going to have a senior class. Pretty sure right now we're going to go with age 35. So it's going to be like not a pro, but a 4x4 senior class. And the cutoff will be 35 starting out. And we can take that and look at it in the year. Saying that right now, if we want to look at that and make an adjustment in that age, we can make that. But right now we need to get it done and make sure everybody's ready to go. So we're going to do that. We're going to leave our 4x4 utility open, I guess it would be called. Yeah. That's still a paid class. There's some stuff there because of what's kind of the highest class and the speed wise. We're going to go ahead and leave that just like it is. And then we're going to take a look at our bottom class. And I say our bottom, I hate to say it like that, but the utility class is meant to be for guys just starting out, coming in, wants a place to race, might spend a couple years in there. Once they get the hang of the racing and stuff, they're going to move up, and this age class will definitely help them be able to have a place to move up to and not have to race in that top class that's, right now, as we set the utility open class, has always been starting second row for the last couple of years. And that puts a lot of pressure on people starting second row right behind our top guys in the AA in front of the A. And most importantly, I mean, they know Paul's coming from behind, it puts a lot of pressure on them. So
move over.
So with that being said, we're also looking at that class, and I'm really confused on really what to do with it, just being straight up honest. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to open that up. And for this year, we're going to allow people to jump into there. And basically it's been almost like a skill level class where you could race that. You want a championship. I'm not sure if we've ever really put it in the rules, but I think it's always been assumed that way. Maybe I've even pushed people that way in the past to move up to the only class that we had for 4x4s, which was the open class. Just a lot of deep conversations on that. People don't feel comfortable going to the second row and all that kind of stuff that we've already talked about. So we're just going to open that class up, and if it's a situation where you've won a championship, we're going to let you fight for another championship, and after you've won, say 2 championships, then you're forced to move up. I think most people move up automatically. But we just need to get that a situation where people has a home to get used to racing and pick up their speed and stuff. sometimes it's that first year you're in there, you're not ready, and other people it might take a little bit longer, but we're just going to open that up, let it be more of a fun class. We're still going to hold a championship. We might give a t-shirt away instead of a jacket at the end of the year. We're not sure yet, but we might actually pull that shirt off of Paul and give away the nostalgia.
No.
But no, so basically the big thing is we're going to open up that bottom class. We're going to let people, if they aren't ready for the
open class,
to go clear up front, they can be in that class. We're going to really take a look and let the riders decide at the end of the year on what we need to change. If we need to make change, listen to them and put that moving forward. The age class, I think, is probably just here to stay, but we're going to just see how many riders are in there this year, how many riders come out. There's a lot of talk of a lot of riders coming in this year, so we're excited to see them, and shoot, Paul, the senior class in the 4x4s might be bigger than the senior class in the sport bikes.
It could be. I've got one little input there. I just want to say, and along that positive note, guys, bring your friends, get them out there. Let's grow these utility classes. Nostalgically, back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, we had on sport bikes, we had 5, 6 manufacturers that were viable manufacturers. Right now we have Yamaha, or you've got to be in a utility. You got a Can-Am or a Polaris. Well, if they're making them, race them. Get them out there. Let's grow that. I think that'd be a great thing. I'd like to see a bunch of those guys out there.
Paul, you remember when we had one class and we had 15 to 18 people deep in that one class? And we'll talk more stories about that, but those guys were fast. I mean, they were some of the fastest in the country.
Yep.
There was people all over the country looking at our results to see where people were.
Yep. We have GNCC guys there, and they couldn't do nothing against these guys.
A lot of fun times we'll be talking about down the road. So,
yes.
But Chris, that's kind of where we're at. I guess that's kind of the second big announcement, for the utilities. We told them we're going to talk about it and get it out there. The rules are out there. We'll obviously be going back into the rules and making the class for this one and getting them set up the way we've just talked about that. And again, that's the thing that I don't foresee us ever getting rid of the age class. That's up to the riders themselves, at the end of the year. But this is stuff that we're going to talk about throughout the year. And we want input from people throughout the year, not at the end, not at the banquet, but throughout the year on how things are going, that we can monitor this and watch it. And, it's a big change for the series, and we're going to look at it and hopefully make the right call at the end of the day.
All right. So Chad brought up a question here. I couldn't resist. A lot of just chatter going on, but somebody fly a drone, Andy.
Yeah.
You know what?
So that's always a neat thing. I always throw caution a little bit there. We've had some people do that. However, at the beginning of the races, we have to move people back, and people always want to be a little bit close or something, that's so important, and insurance is the one that makes sure of that, so part of that is just making sure that everybody's listening and staying back and we're doing everything right. And, those coverages are great, but sometimes it can get in the wrong people's hands. And unfortunately, we're seeing stuff literally, and I hate to even talk about stuff, bad stuff, but within the last week, I've had 2 conversations with 2 different series, and one of them, insurance went up. Are you ready for this, Chris? Because you work in an insurance company, so maybe you can help us out here. Their insurance went up 300%. For this year. 300%. I will tell you, like I've told a lot of people, helmet cams and a lot of that footage can be used, they can take it out of context and actually be used against you. So sometimes that's a tough part of doing that stuff. So
Yep.
one series has closed. Unfortunately, it was a great series, great people running it, and they are done because of insurance, basically.
Yep, and I don't know if everybody's seen it, but the four-wheeler at a certain race last weekend, going up a hill and getting off track and catching some air and taking out a few people that were standing near the track. I mean, stuff like that, it's going to start raising questions to insurance companies. The more footage that's out there, and it doesn't look good on the industry as a whole. So
Correct. Yep. It's hard not to share that stuff when you see it, but your first thing is, gosh, I wish they wouldn't have posted this.
Yep. All right. So just kind of to recap, there's lots of questions. Andy can kind of go in and comment there. As far as in the questions in the chat, just kind of recap our plan for next week. We're going to have Paul back on, kind of talk about that first race in 2004. We're going to have somebody else as well come back on and kind of discuss his family history. It's kind of been an important part of our racing history, this family from early on. So that's all next episode. We are planning on doing it next Thursday, 7:00 live again. So thank you guys for joining us. Chad, go work on your mangled pretzel machine because you have 43 days left before you race again. So thanks everybody for joining.